The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
57 Texas House Democrats left our beloved state and broke quorum. And we're doing this not for the Democratic Party, but for the democratic process.
Why Texas House members are not at home today, and why Democratic governors are both supporting them and advocating for the exact process they're protesting. Plus, searching for quadruple murder suspects, the latest on two separate police manhunts on separate sides of the country. And then a strong economic rebound on Wall Street, the latest opinions on Main Street and why they might not be feeling the same optimism. This is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, good Monday evening. We're glad you're here with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we begin with the nearly 60 Democrats in the Texas State House who were no-shows for today's quorum call to debate and vote on the state's new congressional maps. Over the weekend, some lawmakers made their way to Illinois, Massachusetts, and New York rather than stay in the Lone Star State. Now they are facing fines, arrests, and other sanctions. The National News Desk, Yami Verhin, is in Chicago with the latest.
We are in Chicago today, just one day after over 50 Democrats left the state of Texas to break quorum so that they would not be able to vote on a redistricting map. Now, one of those Democrats joins us today, State Representative Barbara Gervin-Hawkins from San Antonio. Ma'am, why did you all decide to leave the state of Texas when you're being threatened with felonies, even if you left and were not there at 3 o'clock today at the State House?
Because we want to save our democracy. It's so important. I'm on the redistricting committee, and I was appalled and insulted and felt disrespected when our committee has not reached out to the public like it needs to. They told a lot of lies. I asked specific questions. Where does this idea come from? Who drew these maps? I think they've got somebody out of the White House who drew these maps to come into Texas and destroy us, destroy our relationships and our districts, which is a problem.
Some people would say the Texas Democrats picked up the ball when they didn't like the game and left.
They're so wrong. I come from a sports family, and I know when the game starts, we don't need cheaters. Let's play fair. Let's do it right. And that is doing proper hearings, making sure people know what they're voting on or agreeing to or not agreeing to, but you don't cheat. When you cheat, that tells me you're doing something nefarious, and I believe that we as leaders must stop that.
But while these Democrats say the actions by the Texas Republican State House are an attack on democracy, Governor Kathy Hochul, who is hosting several of the absentee Texas House of Representatives, says Democrats need to fight fire with fire.
All's fair in love and war. That's why I'm exploring with our leaders every option to redraw our state congressional lines as soon as possible. This is a war. We are at war. And that's why the gloves are off, and I say, bring it on.
Meantime, the search for the suspect who opened fire on a Montana bar is now in its fourth day. Police are looking for 45-year-old Michael Paul Brown. He is accused of killing 4 people in the Owl Bar in Anaconda on Friday. Investigators say Brown was a regular there and knew the victims, who ranged in age from 59 to 74. Brown is thought to be armed and dangerous. A $7,500 reward is being offered for any information. A third person has been arrested in connection to the quadruple homicide in West Tennessee last week. Deara Sanders of Jackson, Tennessee, was arrested today for allegedly helping suspect Austin Drummond, seen here after the murders. Over the weekend, Giovante Thomas and Tanaka Brown, also of Jackson, were arrested on the same charges. Police are looking for Drummond, who is still on the loose and considered armed and dangerous. The lobby of the site of the mass shooting in New York City reopened today, a week after a gunman killed 4 people, then took his own life. Blackstone and NFL employees were given the option to work remotely. We've also learned the gunman had sought help from doctors for frequent headaches for years, according to ESPN. He claimed he had CTE and requested his brain be studied. Hostages being held by Hamas are facing barely livable conditions, according to new videos released by the terror group. As national correspondent Matt Galka reports, Israel may be increasing military options in Gaza as Palestinian people face alarming food shortages. A warning, some viewers may find some of the images in this story disturbing.
Horror in Israel and around the world after the release of undated videos by Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad militant group. An emaciated Aviatar David, held hostage since October 7, 2023, appeared to be digging his own grave in an underground tunnel in one of them. In another, hostage Rome Broslavsky appears to be crying from severe hunger pain. The shocking new videos led to demonstrations demanding the release of the remaining Israeli hostages.
Hamas is using Aviatar in one of the most horrific and calculated campaigns of cruelty imaginable.
Both men are believed to be among 20 hostages still alive, with another 30 in Hamas captivity presumed dead. U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff met with hostage families over the weekend, telling grieving loved ones that President Trump is changing strategy with Hamas negotiations, according to Israeli Channel 12 television.
Everybody ought to come home at once. No piecemeal deals. That doesn't work.
Ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas have been stalled since last month. Hamas will reportedly allow Red Cross aid for the hostages if Israel permanently opens humanitarian corridors for Gazan citizens and stops airstrikes during aid distribution. Multiple aid groups have warned of a famine playing out for Gazans. Gaza's health ministry says more than 90 children have starved to death.
Hamas is diabolical. They're a terrorist organization. They're horrible, but they're not the same as the Gazan population or the Palestinian people.
Israel has denied there's an aid shortage in Gaza.
You have issues with distribution. You have issues with Hamas taking over those trucks, threatening the drivers.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly weighing expanding military force in Gaza to free the remaining hostages after diplomatic options haven't panned out.
And we've seen, Matt, some countries around the world, including U.S. allies, pledge to recognize a Palestinian state. This has happened in recent weeks. What's the United States' stance on that?
Well, the White House said last week that they would not be following suit, but because of the worsening humanitarian crisis, at least some House Democrats are signing on to a letter and sending it to the President and Secretary of State, urging the administration to recognize a Palestinian state. And a formal House resolution could be introduced when lawmakers return to Capitol Hill next month.
Live from Washington, D.C., Matt Galka, thank you. President Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney are expected to speak in the coming days as Canada seeks to lower the recently imposed 35% U.S. tariff on most Canadian exports. That is according to Canadian Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who says Canada came away encouraged from trade talks last Friday. But LeBlanc insists there is still room for a deal, quote, that's in the best interests of the two economies.
Ambassador Greer, Secretary Lutnick engage with us in constructive, cordial conversation. So we're prepared to stick around and do the work needed.
In a CBS News interview, LeBlanc adds that Canada was pleased that Trump didn't increase tariffs on goods covered under a 2020 trade agreement. Last week, the White House said the tariff hike was due to Canada failing to curb the flow of drugs across the U.S. border. The Canadian Prime Minister says Canada accounts for only 1% of U.S. fentanyl imports. Rail services back up and running in New Jersey after a train fire in Jersey City this morning. Port Authority officials says they say that the fire started underneath a train car at a pass station, causing passengers to take off. 13 people were treated for smoke inhalation. Look at the chaotic scene right there. 9 of them were hospitalized. Service was suspended for some lines and resumed later. Thankfully, everyone is expected to recover. More than 3,000 Boeing union workers are on strike today following failed contract negotiations. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers in Illinois and Missouri went closed down after assembly plants that work on fighter jets The union rejected a second contract offered by Boeing last night. Leadership suggested rank and file members to accept the offer. The union says this strike is about respect and dignity and not vacant promises. Boeing is planning to use non-labor workers amid the strike. Coming up, evacuation orders, road closures, and air quality issues. The state's affected today by multiple large wildfires. Also, President Trump threatens punishing tariffs on India for buying Russia's oil. Who could have the most to lose? And later, why tools to convert rifles into machine guns are no longer banned, while machine guns themselves are highly regulated. We'll be right back. Nearly 500 buildings are being threatened right now as the Gifford fire in South Central California continues to grow. Evacuation orders remain in effect between Santa Barbara County and San Luis Obispo County as this fire has exceeded 60,000 acres burned. According to Cal State Fire, the Gifford fire is only 3% contained. At least 3 people have been injured and Highway 166 remains closed. Also, as those fires rage on the West Coast, air quality in the Midwest remains unhealthy from smoke and toxins from Canadian wildfires. The impact is being felt from the Dakotas to the Atlantic, reaching as far south as Iowa and Pennsylvania, the mid-Atlantic there. You can see here in red, Wisconsin and Michigan are dealing with the worst air quality today. Tracking the tropics in the Atlantic, the 4th named storm of the season, Dexter, has formed off the coast of the Carolinas. Dexter right now is moving away from the United States and poses no threat to the U.S. The National Hurricane Center is also tracking 2 other disturbances in the Atlantic. Number 2 is off the coast of Georgia right now with just a 30% chance of strengthening in the next week, while disturbance 1 is making its way west from Africa with a 50% chance of developing as it gets closer to the Caribbean islands. Something to keep an eye on over the next week. The markets were up today after finishing last week in the red. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, as you can see, it increased nearly 600 points back above the 44,000, clearing most of those losses following the less than stellar jobs report. President Donald Trump fired the head of labor statistics on Friday and said a new commissioner will be appointed sometime this week. Stay tuned on that. Both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 also both up more than 1% today. Most adults in the U.S., they are stressed about grocery costs, an issue that was key to President Trump's campaign. A new Associated Press New York poll finds 86% of Americans are stressed about paying for groceries. Housing and health care costs are also causing stress for most Americans. Similar numbers of people had these concerns in 2022 when President Biden was in office. The federal government will no longer use paper checks for Social Security and other benefits starting September 30th. The Trump administration is trying to modernize payments and reduce fraud and waste. Less than 1% of Social Security recipients will have to switch to direct deposit or a prepaid debt card. You can request a waiver if you still need those paper checks. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is headed to Russia with just days left for Russia to follow through on President Trump's ultimatum to end its deadly war in Ukraine. The president, not expecting a peace deal, is now looking to punish other countries helping Russia fund its war. National correspondent Acha El-Nashar takes a look at Trump's plans and why even he's unsure they'll work.
By the end of the week, countries buying Russian energy will be hit with triple-digit secondary tariffs if President Trump follows through on his threat.
We're going to put sanctions. I don't know that sanctions bother him. You know, they know about sanctions.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has been able to sustain his war through what were meant to be crippling sanctions from the U.S. and its allies. After months of lobbying by members of Congress, President Trump agreeing to impose punitive tariffs on countries that buy Russian energy like oil and gas, providing Putin revenue to keep his war going. Monday morning, President Trump posting on social media, India is not only buying massive amounts of Russian oil, they are then, for much of the oil purchased, selling it on the open market for big profits. They don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine. Because of this, I will be substantially raising the tariff paid by India to the USA. Trump has previously threatened to set the tariffs at 100%. Levies that high are considered an effective embargo. So far, India doesn't show any sign of slowing the 2 million barrels of Russian crude oil it imports per day.
As far as India-Russia relations are concerned, we have a steady and time-tested partnership.
Before the war, less than 1% of Indian oil imports came from Russia. Now, it's more than 1/3. Russia's other top customers include Turkey and America's single largest trading partner, China, already in delicate trade talks with the U.S.
We don't want to impede on their sovereignty, so if they'd like to pay a 100% tariff, pay it.
Raising import taxes that much risks hurting U.S. customers more than the Kremlin. Trump's not even sure Russia will care.
I don't know if that has any effect, but we're going to do it.
Threats of these tariffs have set off a tense back and forth between Trump and former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, whose reference to Russia's nuclear capability prompted Trump to position nuclear submarines in the region. In Washington, I'm Acha El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The FDA has also issued a recall involving freeze-dried fruit sold at Sam's Club stores across the country. These packs of members mark freeze-dried fruit being recalled over listeria concerns that were sold last month nationwide. The FDA says the company discovered the problem during an internal review of the fruit. No illnesses have been reported so far. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Washington, where food banks are struggling to meet increasing demand.
These days, the Warehouse for Food Lifeline, which distributes to 300 food banks in Western Washington, is being pushed to its limits.
So we just cannot we don't have enough food to meet the demand.
Lifeline says it's harder to live up to their namesake for families in need after federal cuts are now hitting SNAP, the food program that helps 1 million Washingtonians every month. States will have to contribute 5 to 15% towards SNAP costs, which could mean $100 to $300 million for Washington state starting in fall 2027.
And again, nobody's told me where that money is going to come from.
New eligibility requirements are also impacting an estimated 138,000 people, according to the state.
DC restaurants are closing at a rate of about nearly 2 per week. And boy, jobs are also being affected. A new report by the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington shows Full-service restaurant employment sharply fell between March and June, marking the largest drop in years. Much of the blame, they say, lies with Initiative 82. Under the law, base pay for tipped workers is rising year by year, making labor costs tougher to manage. Now, the D.C. Council has already stepped in, freezing the tipped wage at $10 an hour until next year and stretching out the timeline for full parity until 2034.
I did ask him if it hurt, and he said no. His biggest concern was for the octopus. So I guess it happened really quickly. I was a little just shocked that it was happening at all, I guess, just because we'd been interacting with this octopus for years.
A mother is calling for change at the San Antonio Aquarium after an octopus latched onto her son's arm during an interactive exhibit. Brittany Terrence screamed for help when the octopus would not let go. Look at his arm now. Employees were able to remove the tentacles after a few minutes. The boy left with suction bruises on his arm. An ectotherm expert we spoke with believes the octopus was possibly overstimulated. Coming up next here, why gun safety advocates are so concerned about forced reset triggers and why these devices are no longer banned. We'll be right back. There is a small device that can enable a firearm to shoot up to 900 rounds a minute. It is called a forced reset trigger. They were seized by law enforcement because they were seen as a threat to public safety. Well, now they're being given back to the original owners, igniting a firestorm of controversy, as Lisa Fletcher reports.
Up to 900 rounds a minute fired with a single squeeze of the trigger, made possible by this, a forced reset trigger, or FRT. It is one of several machine gun conversion devices that make a semi-automatic weapon perform like a fully automatic one.
Is there any question in your mind that these devices turn a rifle into a machine gun?
No doubt that this can convert a semi-automatic into a machine gun.
In 2024, under Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown, the state joined 26 others banning machine gun conversion devices.
When you think about the carnage that a machine gun can inflict in a community, it's made even worse by these machine gun type weapons.
ATF records show machine gun conversion devices are increasingly showing up at crime scenes. From this mass shooting in Towson, Maryland, that killed 1 and injured 8, to the Las Vegas concert, where one man using a bump stock fired more than 1,000 rounds, killing 60 and injuring 413 others. But for nearly a century, machine guns have been essentially illegal under U.S. law. And since 1986, possessing an unregistered machine gun or conversion device has been a federal crime.
These kinds of weapons present a very severe
threat to public safety.
Steve Dettelbach led the ATF until January of 2025. He oversaw dozens of operations that seized machine gun conversion devices from violent gangs, criminals, and criminal organizations.
We did a search warrant on a home in New Jersey where the Latin Kings had kilos of drugs and weapons, right? They also had a stash of these machine gun conversion devices, a tool of the trade of gang membership, of drug dealing, of destruction.
But this year, a stunning exemption. After a legal challenge over the ATF's authority to declare FRT's machine guns, the government agreed to a deal to stop enforcing the federal ban on forced reset triggers and even give back more than 12,000 devices seized by ATF. Attorney General Pam Bondi cited the Second Amendment and said the settlement ends needless litigation and enhances public safety. FRT's maker, Rare Breed, didn't respond to our interview request, but has been on a public victory lap.
The fight is over. We won. We did it. We beat the ATF.
Announcing this summer that it sold 6,000 triggers in a 2-week period and that it's aiming to make the FRT a factory standard trigger on AR rifles, as well as making them available for other types of guns. Dettelbach saw the firepower firsthand.
I couldn't just fire one bullet. As quick as I would try to release the trigger, impossible to fire just one bullet. And think about how dangerous that is for people in the community. We're talking about a weapon that can fire 800, 900 rounds a minute. A minute.
Unleashing military-grade firepower, says Dettelbach. That's the reason Congress has long outlawed machine guns and the parts that create them.
If there are things we can do, reasonable things we can do to make sure that Congress's intent is effectuated and that there aren't machine guns being fired willy-nilly like jackhammers in the summer all over American streets, we ought to do them.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
Coming up, the dessert that giant panda Bowley devoured at his birthday party at the National Zoo. We'll have more of this cute moment when we get back. One of DC's favorite furballs turns 4 years old today. Bowley was treated with his very own custom fruit-based ice cake at the Smithsonian's National Zoo, which I'm sure was greatly appreciated given all the humidity. The panda arrived in DC in October 2024, along with his potential future mate. They came from China in a revival of diplomacy between Washington and Beijing. And we invite you to join us again this evening as we take a look at the administration's efforts to clean up voter rolls nationwide. Which states have been notified they are not complying with federal laws? I'm Dee Dee Gatton here in Washington. Thanks for watching. See you tonight at 10.